Ngozi was living a quiet and simple life in Abuja, working hard every day and finding peace in her own space. One afternoon, her phone rang, and the familiar voices of her grown children filled the room. They sounded serious, not like their usual selves, and their words carried a heavy weight. They told her that their father, the man she had once shared a home with, had fallen gravely ill. Without hesitation, they asked her to move back into his house to take care of him. She listened in silence, her heart steady, and then spoke with calm strength. She reminded them of the bitter years she had endured, years filled with betrayal, humiliation, and endless suffering at his hands. She told them she could not go back to that pain. But her children did not hear her pain. Instead, they judged her. They called her heartless and cruel, saying that family should always come first. Their voices cut deep when they told her they wanted nothing more to do with her. Days turned into weeks, and her phone stayed silent. The children she had raised with sacrifice no longer called or visited. Neighbors began to whisper, and relatives mocked her, saying even her own blood had turned against her. It was a heavy loneliness, but she carried it with quiet dignity. One evening, her dear friend Kayamika came to sit with her. In the comfort of that friendship, Ngozi opened her heart. She revealed that all these years, she had been secretly building a foundation to help single mothers and widows who suffered as she once did. She had turned her scars into strength and her silence into action. Not long after, the city gathered for a public event. To Ngozi's surprise, she was called to the stage and honored for her tireless work. Cameras flashed, and her name spread across the country. Newspapers carried her story, and her picture was on every screen. The same children who had abandoned her watched in shock as their mother was celebrated for her courage and generosity. Shame and regret weighed on them as they returned, begging for forgiveness. Tears filled their eyes as they realized the true worth of the woman who had given them everything. Ngozi welcomed them with grace but stood firm. She forgave, but she would never return to the chains of her past. She chose her dignity, her freedom, and her future. They pressured her to move back into her ex-husband's house after hearing that he had fallen gravely ill. Her children spoke with urgency, insisting it was her duty to care for the man who once broke her spirit. Their voices carried guilt and command, pushing her to accept a life she had long escaped. She listened quietly, allowing their words to pour out, but inside her heart, memories of the torment she endured came rushing back. She thought of the betrayal, the insults, and the endless nights of tears. With steady resolve, she finally answered. Her tone was gentle but firm. She reminded them that she had once given everything to that man, only to be met with cruelty. She told them she could not go back to a place that had almost destroyed her soul. Instead of understanding, their faces hardened, and their words turned sharp. They accused her of lacking compassion, saying she was turning her back on family when it mattered most. Their harsh judgment cut her deeply, but she refused to waver. The more she explained, the more they pushed back. Their disappointment grew louder, and soon their accusations became unbearable. They called her selfish, saying she only thought of herself. Then came the crushing blow. Her own children told her they wanted nothing to do with her. In that moment, the silence in her small home became louder than their voices had ever been. The days that followed were heavy. Her phone stayed quiet, and the warmth of family was gone. She walked through her neighborhood, hearing whispers of pity and scorn. Relatives mocked her, saying even her children had abandoned her. Loneliness crept into her evenings, but she carried her pain with quiet dignity, refusing to let bitterness consume her. Late one night, her trusted friend Kayamika arrived. Sitting beside her, she offered comfort, and in that safe space, Ngozi shared a secret she had kept close. For years, she had been building something far greater than the life she had lost. A foundation for single mothers and widows. While others judged her, she had been creating hope for women who knew the same struggles. Her story would not end in silence. Soon the world would see her strength, and those who turned away would learn the true weight of a woman's resilience. Ngozi calmly but firmly refuses when her children beg her to return to her ex-husband's house. She listens to their voices filled with pressure and urgency, but her heart stays steady. She reminds them of the truth they have chosen to forget. She tells them about the years she spent living with pain, the betrayal that left scars too deep to hide, and the endless humiliation she endured under the same roof they now want her to enter again. Her words carry quiet strength, not anger, but her decision is final. She looks at them with eyes full of both love and disappointment. She explains that she once gave her youth, her energy, and her heart to a man who never valued her. She tells them that every wound he gave her was a reminder of why she cannot go back. She speaks with clarity, showing them that her refusal is not out of cruelty, but out of survival. She has built her peace, and she will not surrender it for someone who destroyed it before. Her children do not soften. Instead, they raise their voices, accusing her of being cold and ungrateful. They tell her that family means sacrifice, even for those who caused pain. Their words sting, but she does not bend. She stands tall, holding her ground, reminding them that sacrifice without respect is slavery, and she will not chain herself again. The more she speaks, the more they resist. They twist her refusal into heartlessness, painting her as a mother who has lost compassion. The sharpness of their judgment pierces her, but she remains calm. With each word, she defends her right to dignity. She chooses not to return to misery simply to satisfy appearances. The room grows heavy as silence replaces arguments. The children, unable to accept her decision, look at her as though she is a stranger. With finality, they turn away, leaving her with words that cut deeper than any wound she carried before. They tell her she is no longer part of their lives. The sound of the door closing echoes in her chest, but she does not cry. She sits quietly, breathing slowly, reminding herself that freedom sometimes comes with loneliness. Though her heart aches, she knows she has done what is right. She will not walk back into a prison she fought so hard to escape. She chooses herself, her peace, and her dignity above chains of the past. Her children accuse her of being heartless, their words sharp and heavy, slicing through her like a blade. They raise their voices, saying that true family must always come first, even if it means caring for the same man who once caused her pain. They tell her she is cold, selfish, and unworthy of their respect. Each word feels like a stone thrown at her heart, not by strangers, but by the very children she carried, raised, and loved with everything she had. She tries to speak, to remind them of the sacrifices she made, the nights she went hungry so they could eat, the endless hours she worked so they could go to school. But they no longer want to listen. Their eyes are filled with disappointment, their voices with judgment. Instead of gratitude, they choose condemnation. The bond she thought unbreakable now feels as fragile as glass ready to shatter. Then, in the most painful moment of all, they say words she never imagined she would hear. They tell her they want nothing to do with her. They turn her love into rejection, cutting her off as though she is a stranger in their lives. Her breath catches, her chest tightens, but she does not collapse. She stands still, holding her pain quietly, refusing to let them see her break. The silence that follows is louder than their shouting. She watches them walk away, her heart heavy with grief, her spirit aching, yet her face calm. When the door closes behind them, the room feels emptier than ever before. The warmth of her home vanishes, replaced by a coldness that sinks into her bones. She sits in that stillness, realizing the cruel truth. Sometimes the ones you love the most can wound you the deepest. Whispers soon spread in her neighborhood. Relatives mock her, saying even her own children have abandoned her. Neighbors shake their heads, some with pity, others with laughter. But behind her quiet eyes, she knows her worth is not measured by those who walk away. Though she bleeds inside, she reminds herself that betrayal can never erase the strength of survival. In that lonely silence, she gathers her courage. They may have turned their backs, but she will not let their betrayal define her. She will rise, not for them, but for herself, and the world will one day see the truth of her heart. Days pass with no calls, no visits. The phone sits in silence, no familiar voices, no messages of comfort. Ngozi wakes up each morning hoping her children might change their minds, but the days stretch on empty. The walls of her small home feel heavier than before, and the quiet air seems to press against her chest. She moves through her routines with calm hands, but inside her heart aches with the absence of those she once called her world. Neighbors begin to notice the change. They whisper at street corners, their words sharp enough to cut. Some shake their heads, pretending to pity her, while others laugh behind her back, saying even her own children have rejected her. Relatives join in, mocking her, claiming she must have been a terrible mother if her children could so easily turn away. Their voices sting, but she refuses to argue. She walks past them with her head held high, hiding the storm inside her soul. The nights are the hardest. Alone in her bed, she stares at the ceiling, memories flooding back. She remembers the years she struggled to raise her children with little help, how she sacrificed her happiness to give them a better life. She recalls their laughter as children, the warmth of family dinners, the joy of birthdays and celebrations. Now those moments feel like echoes from another lifetime, replaced by silence and distance. She tries to find strength in small things, the sound of birds outside her window, the comfort of her morning tea, the smile of her loyal friend who sometimes checks on her. Yet, when the world grows quiet, the loneliness creeps in, reminding her of the betrayal she never thought possible. It is not strangers who have wounded her, but the very people she gave her life for. Still, deep within her, a spark refuses to die. She whispers to herself that pain will not break her. Though abandoned and mocked, she knows her story is not finished. She reminds herself that dignity cannot be stolen, even by those she loves most. Every tear she hides becomes another layer of strength. She carries her silence like armor, waiting for the day when the same voices that mocked her will see the truth of who she really is. One evening, her loyal friend Kayamika visits. She enters with warm eyes and gentle words, bringing comfort to Ngozi's heavy heart. They sit together in the quiet room, the air filled with unspoken pain. Kayamika can see the sadness in her friend's face, the weariness carried in her shoulders. She reaches out, holds her hand, and asks how she is truly feeling. For a long moment, Ngozi stays silent, but then her lips part, and she begins to share what she has hidden from the world. She tells Kayamika that while everyone believed she lived only in silence and shame, she had been building something far greater. Behind closed doors, with the little she earned and with the help of a few kind souls, she had been creating a foundation. It was not for herself but for women who had known the same suffering she endured. Single mothers left to raise children alone, widows abandoned by family, women mocked by society yet strong enough to rise again. Her voice grows steady as she explains how she spent years saving every coin, reaching out to others in secret, and slowly turning her vision into reality. What looked like loneliness to outsiders was in fact the labor of her hands, the work of her heart. Kayamika listens in awe, her eyes shining with admiration. She realizes her friend has carried not only her own burdens, but also the weight of many forgotten women. Ngozi explains how the foundation has already begun to touch lives. A mother now has food for her children, a widow has shelter, another woman has hope for tomorrow. Each story fuels her determination. She says that her pain was not wasted. It became the seed of something that would grow far beyond her own life. Kayamika squeezes her hand and calls her extraordinary. She tells her that one day, the world will know this story, and the same people who whispered against her will speak her name with pride. For the first time in weeks, a small smile touches Ngozi's lips. She feels lighter, as though her secret no longer needs to be carried alone. In that quiet room, with her friend beside her, she realizes her journey has just begun. What others thought was weakness was in truth her greatest strength. And soon, the light of her work would shine far beyond her walls. During a public event, Ngozi is honored for her foundation, standing before a crowd that fills the hall with excitement and admiration. The stage lights shine on her, and as her name is called, people rise to their feet in applause. She walks slowly to the podium, her step steady, her face glowing with quiet pride. For years she worked in silence, unnoticed by many, but this moment changes everything. Her story, once hidden behind closed doors, is now unfolding in front of the nation. The organizers speak about her tireless efforts, how she created hope for widows left with nothing, how she gave strength to single mothers raising children alone. They talk about the countless women who found food, shelter, and courage because of her vision. The room fills with emotion as testimonies are shared, voices trembling with gratitude for the woman who refused to let pain silence her. Every word paints Ngozi not as a victim, but as a symbol of resilience. Reporters capture every detail, cameras flashing, microphones catching her soft but firm voice as she thanks those who stood by her. She does not speak of betrayal or rejection. Instead, she speaks of strength, love, and the power of turning suffering into something greater. Her words touch everyone in the room, stirring hearts, leaving people in awe of the quiet mother who became a national inspiration. By the next morning, her name spreads far beyond the event hall. Newspapers carry her picture on the front page. Television programs replay clips of her speech, praising her courage. Social media explodes with her story, and hashtags rise in her honor. From Lagos to Kaduna, from Port Harcourt to Abuja, her face becomes a symbol of hope. The same voices that once mocked her now celebrate her. Neighbors whisper in amazement. Relatives who once laughed now hold their heads low. People who had judged her too quickly now see her strength clearly. She is no longer just a mother left behind. She is a woman lifted up by her own resilience. In that single moment of recognition, Ngozi's life transforms. She is no longer the silent figure in the shadows. She is the woman Nigeria applauds, the woman who turned her scars into a foundation of hope. And her story is now written in the hearts of all who hear it. Her children watch the news, shocked to discover their mother is being celebrated nationally for her strength and generosity. They sit frozen in front of the screen, unable to believe the woman they had accused of being cold is now honored across the country. Headlines flash her name, videos play her speech, and stories of the women she has helped roll out one after another. Their hearts pound with guilt as they listen to strangers praising the same mother they had turned their backs on. They remember the harsh words they threw at her, calling her unfeeling and selfish. They recall how they walked away, leaving her alone, thinking she had nothing left to offer. Now in front of their eyes, the whole nation sees her as a hero. They see women crying tears of gratitude, holding their children and thanking Ngozi for giving them food, shelter, and hope. They realize their mother had been carrying a mission greater than they ever imagined. The weight of shame sinks into them. They whisper among themselves, asking how they could have been so blind, how they could have judged her without knowing the truth. Regret burns deeper as they remember the loneliness they left her in. Every laugh from neighbors, every mocking word from relatives, now feels like a punishment for their betrayal. One of them covers their face with their hands, tears slipping out, while another clenches their fists, angry at themselves for not standing by her. They see the world lifting her up, giving her the honor they denied her. For the first time, they understand the strength of the woman who raised them, the courage of the mother who sacrificed everything for them. The news continues, showing her walking with grace, surrounded by applause, her name on everyone's lips. The children sit in silence, hearts aching, knowing they pushed away the very person who deserved their love the most. They realize that no apology will erase the pain they caused, but still, they feel a growing need to return to her, to fall at her feet, and to beg for forgiveness. They come back, apologizing and begging for forgiveness, their voices shaking as they stand before the mother they once rejected. Their eyes are filled with tears, their faces marked with guilt and shame. They remember the cruel words they had spoken, the way they turned their backs, and now every memory weighs heavily on their hearts. They kneel before her, calling her name softly, their pride broken, their spirits humbled. Ngozi watches them quietly, her heart torn between pain and love. She sees the children she raised, the ones she sacrificed everything for, now trembling in regret. They tell her they were blind, that they did not see her strength, that they failed to understand her pain. Their voices crack as they admit they mocked the very woman who gave them life. They beg her to forgive them, to let them make things right, to accept them back into her arms. The room fills with silence as she listens. Her heart aches at their tears, yet she remembers the deep wound their rejection left. She recalls the nights of loneliness, the whispers of neighbors, the mocking words of relatives. She breathes deeply, her eyes glistening, but her voice remains calm. She tells them she never stopped loving them, but love does not erase hurt. She explains that forgiveness is possible, but trust will take time to rebuild. Her children nod, their tears falling freely, promising to honor her, to stand by her, to never let her feel abandoned again. They tell her that watching the world celebrate her opened their eyes, that they finally see her true worth. They confess that they were wrong, blinded by judgment and pride, and they plead for another chance. Ngozi's chest rises and falls as she looks at them, her heart softening at their sincerity. She reaches out, placing her hands on their shoulders, and tells them she forgives. Her words bring them to sobs, and they cling to her, feeling the warmth they thought they had lost forever. But even as she holds them, she reminds them that forgiveness is not forgetting. She tells them she will not return to the chains of the past, that she will live in dignity and peace. They nod, accepting her strength, realizing they have a mother whose courage cannot be broken. In that moment, they see her not just as the woman who gave them life, but as the hero who taught them its true meaning. She will never return to her past pain. As she looks at her children, still kneeling with tears streaming down their faces, her voice is calm but firm. She tells them that forgiveness comes from her heart, but it does not mean she will walk back into the darkness she fought so hard to escape. She explains that the wounds she carried were deep, and though she has healed, she will not allow anyone, not even family, to chain her to that suffering again. Her words are not harsh, but steady, filled with strength and clarity. Her children nod, realizing their mother is no longer the woman they thought they could push around. She is not weak, not helpless, but a woman who has found her voice and her worth. They cling to her hands, grateful for her mercy, but they understand that the boundaries she sets are firm. She tells them she will always love them, but she will never sacrifice her dignity again. The room fills with a heavy silence, broken only by their sobs and her steady breathing. For the first time, they see her as more than a mother. They see her as a woman who has endured storms and risen stronger than before. She has chosen peace over chains, freedom over fear, and respect over humiliation. Her strength humbles them, and they promise to honor her decision, never to drag her back into the shadows of yesterday. Ngozi rises to her feet, her posture tall, her eyes shining with quiet pride. She has carried pain, betrayal, and loneliness, but now she stands free. The world outside whispers her name with admiration, and those closest to her finally see her value. She does not need to prove herself anymore. Her life speaks louder than any words. With her final stand, Ngozi closes the door on her past and steps fully into her future. She knows her story is no longer one of suffering but of triumph, and she chooses to walk with dignity, strength, and grace. Hi, Besties Cherry Blossom, thank you so much for watching till the end. 2 hearts. Please don't forget to like, thumbs up, drop your thoughts in the comments, speech balloon, and subscribe bell for more amazing stories. See you next time. Sparkles.